Can't stand y'all. I feel sorry for your mother. What you say about my mama?
Dark, bloody, and relentlessly bleak. I am the Wiz. Alright everybody, today I am reviewing the 1993 crime thriller Menace to Society, directed by the Hughes brothers. I remember only one thing about this film when it came out. I was about 10 or 11, and I remember this being really controversial. But I believe most of the controversy was for the violence. I don't think it really was about what the film was about, really. The reaction to the film as well is what sparked a lot of controversy too, because if I remember correctly, when this film came out, there were actually shootings during showings of this film. I don't know if it had anything to do with the film itself, but apparently that was something that happened. I would probably want to read more about that, how that happened. And I gotta be honest with you, after watching the film, I am surprised by a few things about it, but I do have one thing I want to say right off the bat, and this is that this film is bleak as hell. It is really dark in certain spots as well. And thank God it's 90 minutes, because oh my God, if I had to sit through 2.5 hours of this, oh boy, that would have been hard. Now, let's just get right into it. This is a bleak morality tale where the power of the film remains in its main character. When I hear a lot about this film, I hear about the violence, I hear about the grittiness, but the film, I think, works its best when it's revolved around its main character, who is Kane, played by Tyrone Turner. And basically, this is a morality tale about a person who, in the beginning, I would say tries to be good, but I don't know if that really fits, but is better than the people he surrounds himself with, except for his grandparents. But then slowly succumbs to the lifestyle of which he lives in, which is being a drug dealer, being a hustler. Kane was unfortunately raised in a terrible manner. He was raised with a dad who was a drug dealer and with a mother who was a drug addict, and he got to see a lot of the hustling, the violence, the drug dealing that he really shouldn't have had when he was so young. So he was already predisposed to all of that. As the film goes on, he slowly starts to go from being a high school graduate and possibly having a future to then going into that lifestyle. And I think the film works really well when it stays on this theme. The other thing, of course, is violence begets violence, and it's a good theme that works, but I think it's less potent, and I think this is really not the fault of the film itself. I think it's because that we've seen this theme done ad nauseum, especially when it deals with this type of subject matter, with this type of setting. I mean, we talk about gang violence, we talk about violence between drug dealers, crime violence. Let's take out the fact that it's in the ghettos. Let's even just talk about films in the 30s and 40s, when they have films about gangsters, when they have films about prohibition. And even though I think the film does a good job showing those themes and making it work well within its story, I just don't think it works quite as well as the morality tale when it comes to Kane. The other thing that this film has, I think, is just a certain style that I was very surprised by. I think is great for the film. When it's mostly in the streets, it's very dark, bleak, lots of blacks, lots of blues, and just an overall feeling of foreboding, because one of the things that this film does really well is just a sudden surprise of violence. Like, boom, it happens, and it is right in front of your face, and it happens quick. That has mostly to do with O-Dog, who is played by Lorenz Tate, whose performance is incredibly showy, and I would say is good for what it is. But the style of the film, I think, when it comes to Kane and O-Dog in the streets, I think it works really well on that end. But I think where the style of the film excels is outside of the streets. I think the one scene that I remember distinctly is the interrogation scene between Kane and a detective, where it was in a circular motion. There's oranges, there's blacks, there's faceless people in the background who I believe are white. And it's the black detective and Kane, and they're talking, and then there's this feeling of intensity, and then this intimidating circumstance that Kane is in, and you really feel the intensity in that scene. It was really well done. In fact, I think what's interesting about this film, with the exception of one person in the film, anybody who is white is almost faceless, is almost kind of like ghostly in a way. I think it's interesting where they went in that route, where a lot of these films tend to have a white savior or a white person that instigates or something. And it just feels like, even though there are white people and they're of course bad in this movie, with again the exception of one person I can think of, it's almost like they have no personality, nothing other than antagonism to these characters. Now, I do have one issue in this film, and it's the blood in the violence. I think the violence works overall in the film, but I think the amount of blood they use in the violence is excessive. Now, I will say this. If you think back in '93, I don't think there were a lot of films that were this bloody and this violent, so I can understand why it shocked a lot of people when they saw this. But now that I have watched a lot of Tarantino films, a lot of other bloody films, let's say like Black Hawk Down, stuff like that, it almost looks comical in a way. It almost looks kind of overdone. One scene I can remember is when Kane gets shot in the film and he's being carried into the hospital and he is just caked with red, with blood in his mouth, with blood on his face, with blood on his shirt, everywhere. And yes, I know he got shot, but it looked like ridiculous when I was watching this. I was like, whoa, that's a lot of blood. And then when other shootings happen, when they show blood, it is just spouting out like fountains. It was like, whoa, that's a lot too. So I thought that was a little excessive. But then again, thinking about it at the time, I think it works pretty well just because of how shocking it is. I think if this was made today, I don't think they would be as gratuitous with the blood. I think they would be, maybe not subtle, but I think they would be a little more believable on that end. I think it would be a little more grisly, but this just looks comical in a way that I am not going to fault too much on it. But I think in today's eyes, when looking at it and looking at those scenes with blood, I think it is kind of laughable. In closing, I think the thing that really struck a nerve with me with this film is when I started thinking about this film and Do the Right Thing. When I saw Do the Right Thing, I look at that film as a film that is kind of depressing, even though it has some funny moments, it's got some light moments, and it's a very colorful movie. But what was interesting watching this and thinking back to Do the Right Thing is that Do the Right Thing is actually kind of a positive film, whereas this movie is entirely bleak and dark and disturbing. And I think I can pinpoint the reason why. Do the Right Thing is about community. It's about a group of people coming together even though they're being oppressed. Menace to Society is not that at all. It's about turfs, it's about gangs, it's about fighting. It's not even about a community at all. It's about a bunch of people who are trying to overtake other people and trying to stake their claim in as brutal of way as possible. And I was kind of stunned realizing this when I was watching this, because I've thought for about years now after watching Do the Right Thing that was a depressing and negative film. And then I saw this and I was like, whoa, I'm incorrect there. But I think Menace to Society is pretty effective in this. But again, it's only effective in certain ways. Overall, when it is in those certain ways, I think it works incredibly well. Alright, so before I get into my rating, let's go into the ratings of other people that have seen this movie. Letterboxd users have this at a rating of 3.9 out of 5. Rotten Tomatoes has this at an 84% fresh. And this did not get any Oscar nominations? Not even for screenplay? Wow, I was actually kind of surprised. I'm going to give this a rating of 3.5 out of 5. I think this is a very good movie. When it kept on with the story of Kane and what he's going through and his slow degradation from becoming a high school graduate who might be something to them being a gangster is where it's most potent. The whole violence begets violence theme works well, but I think it's less potent on that end. And the way that the film portrays the violence and the style of the film, I think is really well done. But that being said, a lot of the things that are in this film have been done in other films and I think have been done better. And on top of that, I think the amount of blood that they use in the violence is comical. Again, if you think back in '93 and how they used the blood back then, I can understand why it was really shocking, but now it looks a little bit ridiculous. I debated whether I was going to do 3.5 or 4, but I'm going to stick with 3.5. This will definitely be something I'll watch again at another time. I'm comfortable with the rating I'm giving this. So 3.5 out of 5 for Menace to Society. All right, guys, thank you for watching. See you guys next time. Thank you you for watching this video. If you liked it, please like it. If you didn't, please subscribe. And if you have questions or comments, go ahead and leave a comment whether you liked it or not. It just helps, you know. If you want my written reviews, you can go onto my letterbox at IamThatWiz, or you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. Thank you very much again for watching. See you next time.